Okay, we should be live now.
Yep, we are.
All right, so this is the first user feedback meeting after the Node.js interactive in Vancouver and our semi-annual collaborative summit. And so since this initiative started coming out of last year's, so coming out of the previous year's collaborative summit, then I kind of see this as a good time to sort of clean the house, check in, see where folks are, and kind of consider the fact that we have a new year of user feedback, and do some planning, do some housekeeping to really look at what we're going to accomplish, and what we can commit to. It's probably the biggest thing cross initiatives that we need to address. One of the interesting side effects about doing good things in the Node.js project is like it tends to do positive things to your career, and then you get busy, and then we have to see how to maintain the stuff that we're volunteering and taking care of here in the project. So as of Monday, I'll be starting a new role. Be announcing that at the beginning of November. And that'll change in my situation slightly, though I don't see any direct impact on my schedule in terms of being able to sort of lead and guide and champion the user feedback initiative. How are folks doing with this Friday session? Do we need? We Ahmed, you started carrying the enterprise focus area to Thursdays. Is this this time slot? Just in full disclosure, has always been. I picked a convenient time for me, and since I was championing this initiative, and that's why we are at this time slot. And I'd love to hear from folks if we could move things around and you would be able to do more with user feedback. I would like to at least consider that now.
So this time slot is fine for me. Actually, it's probably pretty good. It just so happens that I have a full day of we're out house shopping right now. So nice. I'm kind of looking around a property while we're having the call. But generally, it's good for me.
Yeah, I would say now that it's in the calendar, it's harder to move things around.
It's fine for me too. So
right on.
Except during the summer.
Right.
And now it's fine.
Yeah, I'm always flexible. Whatever. Whenever works for y'all, works for me.
Good for me too.
Great. So yeah, in terms of my role in this next job and my schedule, I think this time slot will continue to be highly compatible. I'm going to be challenged with some of the sessions that we have on Monday over the next few weeks, especially since I'm going to be doing onboarding and stuff like that. So that'll be a thing, since many of us are community committee and other committee members. You'll notice that. So cool. That's great to hear, and we'll be able to sort of continue what we've been accomplishing with user feedback, and do that, and I will likely be able to lean even more into to doing this. Some of the process work that I'll be doing in my new role will be in line with user feedback. So I'm excited to sort of bring some of those work capabilities to Node.js space. So not impacting anyone here. This past week I raised, I sent out an issue to everybody who is currently a member, and asked if anyone needed wanted to elect to step down. So William Kapke has sort of self-identified that he needs to move to emeritus status, and hasn't been able to dedicate the time and energy that he'd hoped to this. That's kind of the easy one. The harder one is proactively taking there's I'll pick on Mike because I know Mike. Mike Hostetler, for example, hasn't been able to attend regularly, and is currently a member. And realistically, needs to be voluntold to move to emeritus. And right now, I don't believe we have a formal process to be doing that.
Yeah, what we've ended up doing in a few other working groups is basically it's a process where we open an issue saying, hey, confirm you still want to be active, or move to emeritus. And usually what we've done is it's something like people have 2 weeks to respond. If they don't, we remind after another 2 weeks. And if there's so basically it's effectively after 4 weeks, if there's no response, we move people to emeritus. And it's also been that hey, if you come back within the next month and want to say, hey, wait a second, I just was out for a month, you just get added back.
Got it. Okay.
So it's a fairly low bar in terms of, if you're responding or following what's going on at all, you should know. And even if you missed it for a month, there's a way back. So it's not like we're booting people out. But that has worked for, I think we did it for benchmarking diagnostics. I'm trying to think, there's one other one. We currently have that going for MAPI as well. So you might want to just, if you find the issue in, say, diagnostic, which is like membership review.
Great.
And there it's sort of the first one basically says, here's the process we're following. So that would just be my suggestion. It's sort of a fairly, it's not a big push, but it does remind people that they should make a choice. And if they're not listening at all, then, it just happens.
Right. And, I'm happy to reach out. I know that, in user feedback and other community committee orgs, maybe folks aren't as plugged into to GitHub, so I can send an email.
And for what it's worth, in the ComCom, we also have a little bit stricter of a process, but also less strict. I generally reach out to people to say, hey, do you care if we move you to emeritus? Like you're saying, reach out via DM or something. I don't think anyone ever said no. And then, we also have I think if you don't participate for 3 months or 6 months, you're just automatically moved. So it's if you're just totally inactive, that's totally fine. That said, the re-onboarding process is a bit lighter, where you don't have to go through being voted in. It's just any objections to this person coming back? No, which there never was. Cool, you're back. It's very, very light. And there's not a time frame on that. Once you're in emeriti, you can come back if there's no problems with that.
Great. Yeah, I mean, for me, it's largely figuring out and aligning with the expectations and the rules. And I want to make sure that as I'm doing this, it'll likely be the model for any subsequent actions, right? So in this particular group. So I want to make sure that I'm sharing that. Great. I'll look at the docs a bit, and thank you, Michael, for the pointers to the diagnostics working group.
Yeah, we might, I could see even at some point we might want to formalize that, hey, every working group should do that once a year or something, or even once every six months. It's fairly low overhead, and it's not personal or anything. It's just because some of them we ended up with, there'd be like 10 people who were listed but hadn't been around for a while, and that kind of discourages, I think, sometimes people from joining because they say, hey, well, there's lots of people on top of that already.
I think the Node.js website is a good example of that. There was I think 20 contributors, and about 2 of them were active for a year and a half.
Right.
So that was one of the issues I had originally with how we did governance in IOJS. And I talked to Michael about this multiple times. But it's we can leave people on, but then that makes getting consensus harder, and it adds maintenance burden, significant maintenance burden when you have to go reach out to 20 people and 15 of them don't respond.
And that's why, we did it so that, there's lots of time. So it's not like if you're around, you should notice within a month, I think is pretty fair.
Right.
And then another month where it's like, okay, we special circumstance. After 2 months, if you haven't said, hey, then I don't think nobody should complain, at least in my opinion.
Right. Great. So coming out of interactive, I thought, things went really well. Feedback around user feedback was really positive. One thing that in the Collaborator Summit sessions, I led the mentorship session, and one thing I noticed this year, compared to last year, is I think we dropped the ball a bit in orient to the various projects coming from Code and Learn. So I just like to sort of note that, and as we're doing this sort of second year workflow, one of I think not our responsibilities, but absolutely our opportunities at the Collaborative Summit that's connected to our annual conference is we have a real opportunity to recruit and onboard new members. And I was doing the working group, and I didn't do this there, and in that session, doing mentorship, I really oriented my discussion and content to getting folks involved, but not to doing the orientation stuff. I thought Tierney 2 years ago did a really fantastic job of sort of providing an overview of everything that was going on within the community committee. So one, sort of popping the stack a bit. I think we really need to do a community committee level sort of triage and orientation at interactive, and then then we would benefit, even if it was community committee and the subcommittees represented and initiatives. Then splintering out from there, folks are like, I'm interested in doing community, self-identify, I'm interested in doing community committee. Let's go talk about user feedback.
I think there's a bit of a tension between the Code and Learn and the Collaborator Summit and new people at the Collaborator Summit, right? Because there's the goal of getting the collaborators together, having the discussion, and then there's this sort of separate goal of getting new people who potentially haven't been involved, sort of interested. And the thought I'm having is it might make sense to actually separate those, so that there's a day which is Collaborator Summit and a half day which is basically You're not part of the groups. You're not part of these teams. We'll tell you all about them, try and get you interested,
Nice.
try and pull you in. And then the Collaborator Summit is actually something separate, because I think this year was kind of like, well, we didn't have, we didn't have as much time because we had like the half part of the half day and the first day was actually used to do more general things because it was the Collaborator, follow on to Code and Learn.
Isn't that the same as it was last year though? I think we did that last year as well.
We might have, but it's sort of, I'm thinking that it's not a perfect. Sorry, what are you saying? System. Like, are you saying that what we did last year is what I'm suggesting we do, or what we did?
No. So we did the half day last year as well. So we effectively had a day and a half. And I totally agree that that's not as effective. I think what you're suggesting, like maybe taking the form of put that the day before the conference, although we're then requiring people to stay 5 days.
I don't know about the timing, but yes, I think it's more like what we really need is the day of come and, Code and Learn is one half, but then the other half is like, here's the projects, here's the things, here are the overviews. Not necessarily going to be interesting to the people who are part of the working groups already, other than helping to deliver it, right?
Right.
But I think that, it seems like there's a space for a day of that, and then the Collaborator Summit is kind of a little bit different, which can be the next couple days.
Yeah, I agree.
And it could be that, well, okay, if you get really excited on the first day, then you can come to the Collaborator Summit. But the Collaborator Summit really assumes you have the context, you have the knowledge. We're not going to do upfront talks that are more generic. It's just like, okay, let's get the working groups together and go from there.
Yeah, I mean, as a baseline, I think having that half day that's after Code and Learn be recruiting or new member orientation focused. I think that's great, and I think Tierney was hitting it like, wow, 2 days on that would be a lot, but it would, but it's not. Right. It's, those, we seem to really sink our teeth into whatever issues we, have the opportunity to focus on during Collaborative Summit. So if we can carve out 2 days, I'm sure that we would, I would value those 2 days for sure.
Well, it's because the one we had in Germany was 2 days on its own. Right. So
right. And I think, we're building that experience in, kind of the off session, which is just collaboration. And so I think that since Matteo and I organized the other one, we were really layering back in a lot of the successes of what we did in Berlin, and kind of just applied that to the half day. It's like, all right, now let's fill in the half day with that.
Yep.
Yeah, I've never seen community contributor days in action. But yeah, I mean, I helped some folks in the Drupal community kind of orient themselves to Node recently. And, one of the things that community has done very effectively is documentation sprints, right? Something that we don't as a community do, but we've kind of been circling around. Doc sprints would be a great activity to sort of, collaborate at the edges with folks.
Right. These things seem to be online, the contributor days. It's something we could consider doing, like, not necessarily aligned with the conference, but at other times as well.
Yeah. I mean, what have you gone and participated in any of those sessions, Tierney? Do you have any perspective that you'd like to share on those?
I've not.
Okay.
No. I've mostly talked with Tracy because she's wanted to do one for Node for a while.
Awesome.
I have watched a bit remotely, and it's mostly just helping people get on board and get familiar with the tribal knowledge that we have, or that each contributors have. So yeah, that seemed, and then actually helping them push through things and get to the point where they're comfortable with contributing.
Nice. And this is all done in Hangout?
No, so it's an in-person event, and then it is also streamed.
Okay. So maybe that's because I saw there was a recording of them all.
Yep. They stream the event. So.
Got it. Yeah, I think there's definitely interest and enthusiasm, from the end user community for that sort of content and context. It really comes down to us as collaborators, whether we have bandwidth.
Cool.
All right. So I'd like to get into our focus areas. I can start with the general user feedback focus area. Meetup. Yay. Grumble. So it was really nice to get the online session on Meetup. I got flagged almost immediately as being an online session, and I tried to work around it, but Meetup's being really aggressive right now about a meetup somehow means that you're meeting in person, and if you're not, then it doesn't apply to meetup.com. That's a new post WeWork acquisition.
Are there any competitors
that does a good job as Meetup?
Well, even if they don't do as good a job, it doesn't matter. If they're going to say no, then it's like, are there any alternatives?
I mean, we may want to go down the Crowdcast path, but it's not like a Meetup collective type thing.
Yeah, I mean, Crowdcast gets a little bit spendy. Once you get over a certain threshold, we aren't above that threshold yet, but I could definitely see us tapping hitting that ceiling.
What's the threshold?
I think it's like 100 users, 100 participants. That will get you into like a $90 a month price point.
Okay.
So
I think 30 gets you into paid.
I know that they're a Node.js focused startup, like their backend is Node.js. Is it worth reaching out to them? And like I've talked to the CTO a few times. Is it worth reaching out to them to see if they'd be willing to comp it for Node.js as an open source project?
Well, so Crowdcast solves a very different problem. The reason why I love Meetup in terms of its functionality is it provides a central, folks join a Meetup, and then Meetup does a great job of engaging and notifying everybody about every Meetup that you published. That is every meeting that you have published associated with that Meetup, and it just snowballs over time. The folks that are subscribed and engaged there just snowballs, and that works really well. So if you're trying to build basically a group of committed folks that are sort of loosely affiliated, but will get notified when the thing happens, Meetup does that well.
Right. So are there any others that is kind of the, like, I understand that's the benefit. We want like a group people can join. We want to get be reminded when we have meetings. If that's, are there anybody else who does that similar thing? Even if they're not as well known or not as
the Brooklyn.js folks had something that they use for. Yeah, Tito does tickets, right?
That's what they're using, isn't it?
I had something more obscure for a while.
For what it's worth, Dan, like the very thing that you love about Meetup is the thing I hate about it, because they're so pushy with the emails, and it's really hard to. You have to there's 50 different checkboxes to unsubscribe for any given Meetup that you join, and you can't just do a uncheck all.
Got it.
And it's so much. There's a lot of pain involved there, and the thing that I like about Meetup is, it's just that people use it. It's not that it's right. It's not that it's awesome, and I think they're kind of I don't love their business model, but people look for meetups there, and that's a huge thing.
But I guess, is there any point talking about them if they've just said no to online meetups? It doesn't matter how great they are if they're basically saying, sorry, you can't use us.
I guess there's no point.
What else can we do, right? It's okay, what are our alternatives is really the...
Right, so, one of the goals, turning back to sort of the why of Meetup, one of our goals with engaging general user is breaking out of Twitter, our collective Twitters, and GitHub to get in front of broader user base, and honestly to reduce the burden of doing so to as low a threshold as possible. We aren't needing to sort of engage a marketing apparatus as much to promote our things. But maybe that's what we needed to do. Just engage, Tracy Lee and Zibby and, foundation representatives to promote the thing for long enough time. That means mostly Medium. I mean, are we getting out of that's my main objective. Whatever we do needs to go beyond the echo chamber of folks that are really paying attention to Node.
Exactly. We want to. Here's a.
I mean, we could potentially roll our own, with individual membership and website redesign. We are looking at creating identity. With identity, we can, tie subscriptions, but that's a lot of hand rolled stuff.
I just pasted a link to Down to Meet. I don't know if that's another. It sounds similar. Just looking at the.
It looks like the GitLab version of Meetup.
Okay. Why do you say that? Is it a look and feel or something?
Yeah, it definitely looks and feels like meetup.com.
Okay.
So GitLab.
I see the clone version.
GitHub, the clone version, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, maybe it's a alternative.
Cool. Yeah. Down to Meet. We'll give it a look through and see if it bugs Christopher enough.
Two of them that are asking you to come to me.
For what it's worth, it looks like Crowdcast is about $50 a month at the cheapest thing. It doesn't look like they have a free plan.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like 50 for 100 and then 90 for 250.
Right. Does it have the, like, I think the broadcasting wasn't our issue. It's the joining and becoming a group part. Does it have that part of it?
You can follow it. But,
yeah.
I've never seen a lot of, traction particularly around that. Ahmed, have you gotten to a point where there's a real following on the Crowdcast that you're using?
No, not really. I'm going to move away from it. But the thing I want to ask, like, what is it in the group mechanic that we want to surface here? Like, is it, coming back to the point, like, is it just the email, being able to email people and let them know that there's something happening? Because if that's really the mechanism, then it's just a newsletter at that point.
Well, it's the having people signing up, being able to see, okay, there was like 200 people that were interested.
Right.
And then, the regular reminders and like, hey, I'm going, that whole thing about, hey, I see there's 50 other people going, oh, I better not lose out my spot. And,
right.
Those kinds of things do give a little bit more of like a group feeling. And I think, Dan's other comment about it being regular, like I get a regular email every month to my local JavaScript meetup, right? And it makes me a little bit more likely that I'm actually going to go, because it's like, I feel guilty that I didn't go this month, right?
So it's a little bit of the gamification of the community feel.
Yes.
But the main mechanism is the email still, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Yeah. Although
the regularity of that email, right? Like,
Sure.
the system would have to like let everybody know.
But I think also the confirmation that you're coming, because I think, again, if you said I'm coming and I've taken a spot,
right,
that again is another reinforcer for I should go. Where if it's just like, I got the email, maybe I'll go. I don't feel bad if I don't go, right? So I think it does do a job of getting you a little bit more committed to showing up.
Right.
My name's on the list. I've said I'm going to be there, therefore I feel like I should. And you can see, oh yeah, we got 80 people signed up for.
I'm just trying to distill down like the core things that we're trying to surface here by asking these questions, because it's not so much like a newsletter per se, but it's like a campaign automation perhaps. And if you look at streaming solutions, like you can get to the point of perhaps streaming on, I don't know, like Twitter if you want. But it's the kind of check-in and RSVP mechanism. It's not necessarily an event type RSVP, but more of a check-in type behavior that you're describing.
Yeah, it's the feeling like you've joined a group and then feeling like you've committed to going to the meetings. And
yeah, I'm just trying to figure out if there are different metaphors other than like communities or organizing tools out there to surface the things, but Meetup seems to dominate that space.
Yeah, really, right. Yeah, that if I extend that desire, right, it actually doesn't work the way I'd like it to with Meetup today. I'd love something that integrated into Zoom, which is the platform that we're using to actually record and broadcast things, and folks getting notified. I mean, we kind of have a weird situation where you want to notify folks. Do you send them to Zoom or do you send them to YouTube?
So
I think it should be, for our case, it should always be Zoom, because we don't want passive watchers. We want people who are chatting, right?
Right. It's true.
So Zoom is interesting because they do have webinars, and webinars are things that you schedule and sign up for. So there's that behavior of I'm opting in. It doesn't take it necessarily all the way, but then that's where you can like hook in something like Campaign Monitor or whatever the other thing from MailChimp is called, where you can just do triggered based events for emails. So like if somebody says RSVP, you send them an email and then you send them a reminder, those kind of things, if you want to do that to kind of mimic the Meetup behavior without actually being on the Meetup itself.
Right. And the webinar registration, you're right, might cover part of that.
And it also shows the attendees. If you can enable that on Zoom as well. You can say what other people are attending.
Yeah.
And actually it requires less because it doesn't require you to register, like to have an account like meetup.com. It just needs your and username, or just a name and email.
Well, it'd be fun to get something on Node.js.org.
Yeah, if you put that on the website, that becomes your community hub essentially.
Right. Right now, the Node.js.org basically has download. That's it.
it has more, but that, like, if you actually look at the traffic, that's the only thing people look at is download.
Right now. Got it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you look at the homepage, there's definitely more content, but in terms of like what we are presenting, that you can act on, there's the definition of the thing, which if you know the definition, you're probably not going to go click on that, and then there's the download links. So, okay. I just want to
we do have a banner, and we could use the banner to announce things and stuff, but yeah, you could see but we have the sign up for the Node.js everywhere. We could also have like a regular here's, sign up for the next Node.js user feedback, or, the next Node.js meetup, virtual meetup or something. That might be. The thing is, if they're already coming to the Node.js website, is that getting us outside of our, the goal was to get outside of our regular areas, right?
Well, I think that there needs to be some physical space in the universe where those things need to happen. And right now we're talking about sending them to meetup.com. I'd honestly rather send folks to nodejs.org, right?
Yeah.
I mean, excuse me, meetup.com. But
I mean, Node.js.org is outside of our space already. Like, our space right now is Twitter and GitHub. That's where we actually operate community work.
Yeah.
And so actually making, as Ahmed said, the Node.js website a community space levels that a bit more and makes it a broader thing. And we can have a little bit more control over it. We won't get taken down because we're an online meetup.
No, that's true. So yeah, that is interesting. If we could put something on that front that says, like, here's, come register for this, and that pointed to a Zoom webinar, maybe that would be, and then every month there's basically.
What's the timeline we want to do that on?
So I think that, given the attendance last time, which was, middling, we would want to do two things. First, let's define whatever content that we're going to do and finalize that before any announcement, before any dates. Like, let's build what the next event is, and then I would like to see in this next iteration kind of how big we can do, and really sort of test the boundaries of that, and in order to do that really well with webinars, you kind of need something like 90 days. Like, it's a fairly extensive promotion period if you really want to draw folks in over time. You need physics and time.
I don't think that, I think we should choose what time we think we need and then do it, right? Like, if it's 90 days, then let's set ourselves a goal for 90 days, depending on when that turns out.
Right. Right in the middle of Christmas. I think in the next iteration, that's what I'd like to do is shoot for something. We'll work with Zippy. We'll work with the foundation to promote it. We'll draw in. We'll take some content this time that's not just core.
Yeah.
And sort of model having a user share some of their experience. So we're drawing on that experience. We've had Walmart in the past. Maybe if folks have a proposal of, this is really interesting use case for Node that folks haven't heard. I'd like to explore that. I really enjoyed the American Express presentation at the American Express team presentation at Interactive. I thought they did a wonderful job sort of sharing their stack and their challenges working in financial services and so that if you have a chance to sort of poke through all the videos are online now. If you have a chance to poke through those videos, I highly recommend that. Good sort of overview of a user experience. Okay, I've run my mouth a lot. I wanted to hand off the discussion points to both Christopher and Ahmed around the other focus areas. Christopher, why don't we start with you, since you've potentially gotten to this point where I've been asking, like, are you graduated? Now that the tooling working group is a thing in the project, and do you still want to leverage the user feedback space and an opportunity to support that group, or has tooling achieved what it needs, and that's going to be the new home?
I'm not sure. I talked about this with the group at the Collab Summit, and basically we decided to table that for now. Cool. We certainly have plenty of things to do for now. Like, there's stuff that needs to get done. We have quite a few things actually we've come up with already from the feedback we've gathered here. I would expect to want to do another one at some point. I don't know if it's going to be like a regular occurrence. I'm going to guess not. But I can't say quite yet if we want to move the whole effort back into that group. Because certainly if you're working with these meeting sites or whatever,
right,
that is a resource that we'd also need to consume if we want to get the word out and get people to actually join us. So at that level, that's I want to at least keep tabs on what's going on, and hopefully that is something we can open up to other groups that need it or want to use it. But that's kind of where we stand.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, that works for me. I'm happy to continue just asking. I guess on my end, it's important to consider that y'all are just getting started, and so you don't know what you need yet, right? Or what sort of outreach until you continue sort of the process of coalescing that group and seeing those needs. So it's probably too early to determine.
Yeah,
cool.
I think it will be a good opportunity to do so once we've landed a few more initiatives and we kind of ask people, okay, this is what we've done. Are we on the right track? That sort of thing. So
great. Ahmed, what are your thoughts about the enterprise group?
I think probably still need to be a few more kind of tweaks before we can talk about like how does that evolve, and I would like to keep that as part of the user feedback group for now. The one thing, given the context of what we're just discussing, like communities and how do you build a community that's connected, like I don't see the kind of enterprise group being as active as part of the same community, and somehow it might end up needing a sub community of its own, especially when it comes to things like call to actions and getting them involved in initiatives that the core team would like to run through, for example, testing a beta release or getting feedback on performance or something like that. So whatever lessons come out of this conversation that we just had, either that we can replicate, or we can make a kind of a little corner of it that we can add these people to without it becoming a point of spam and noise to them. Because those folks who will be part of those enterprises, and let's say in your companies like yours in the future might be interested in helping out, they don't want to be overwhelmed either. But I think that could be as simple as a newsletter and a call to action every once in a while when needed. And when we want to do like these kind of meetings, then it's a personal invite that works best to get these people to actually give us their time, because their time is very valuable.
Yeah, I think you're right that the different groups potentially need different, ways of bringing the group together. So.
And the one thing, go ahead.
I just wanted to check with Tierney about the newsletter. Does it make sense to piggyback on Node.js everywhere, or should we just spin up rudimentary infrastructure for a newsletter and get that ball rolling?
I think using other existing art is probably going to be less work for us in the long run. It's going to be most beneficial because that already has I think 7,000 emails that it goes out to, addresses that it goes out to. And we can send out a different email. If we want to create our own, we can send it to that list, and we don't have to spin up our own infrastructure for it. But I think it'd be beneficial, if we have that kind of long time frame, I think it'd be more beneficial to use the current means and the current channels rather than adding another channel.
Yeah, and I suspect they're looking for content, so.
Yeah, always.
So I don't think they're mutually exclusive, though. So, no. if we did commit to letting everybody know through Node.js everywhere what's going on, and then spun up, Ahmed, do you think that the enterprise group would only want to hear from their focus area, or because I don't think we could do like three, general and tooling and enterprise, seems like overkill. But maybe if we just started with enterprise.
I agree. I'm just saying it's not the point of view is not about what the individuals and the group would want, but more so what's more of a benefit for the let's say the technical committee that they want to get action out of. It's more for the benefit to keep it less of a group that people just subscribe to and sign up for, more of a, hey, we have an action. Let's say there's a conference coming up, there's a new release coming up. Make it more kind of like event driven. That way, it gets more higher visibility. Right, I don't know if I can explain it better, but.
Yeah, I think that, especially, and I think in general in user feedback, where we're disengaging with end users, that, having that channel, establishing that channel, right, would give us this baseline of capability, allowing us to get out of the echo chamber of GitHub and Twitter. Do you want to take an action on that?
Yeah, so my next action is I want to schedule another kind of community meeting for the enterprise group. But as a requirement for that, I think having that email sign up / newsletter / method of communication beyond just me sending emails to individuals, so people can opt into that conversation, and then we can make it easier for follow-ups, especially as we want to start asking for the different working groups what actions they might want to surface, whether it's a survey or an engagement of some sort, so we can make it more structured. So I don't know, again, the point that you were just asking about the newsletters and how that would work, that would be the prerequisite to figuring out the next step.
Well,
so who would be the person to help answer that question then?
Good question.
Yeah, what was the question? It was
newsletter. What would we use? What would you use? Just.org infrastructure? Is that the right one?
No, it's not the Node.js.org infrastructure. If we want to use the existing work, like the prior art, that would be the LF mailing list stuff. And the best point of contact that I can think of is Zibby. It's worth just reaching out to her and to kind of see what the next steps could be.
So you want an infrastructure that will manage people opting in and out of the mailing list, I guess.
It doesn't have to be an infrastructure. It just has to be something separate than a public group. So here's a workflow. If it's coming from enterprise@nodejs.org or something similar, right, that would be like the distinction for somebody to look in their inbox and know that this is something to look after. And we can add people manually to it, but as long as we're able to trigger that communication through a centralized thing. And again, it can be manual. It doesn't have to be something people sign up on a website or anything.
Right, okay.
So we know how to reach out to them as opposed to coming from my personal email address every once in a while, let's say.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know that we've done that anywhere.
Yep. But, I think that community committee, in general and user feedback in particular would benefit from.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. So, yeah, no, I think you're right, though, that we should ask Zibby to see if there's something that the Linux Foundation has to help us for that. Because they're obviously sending some of those emails from particular addresses.
Right. I mean, they have their own marketing automation stuff, and it's relatively automated. And there is if you're doing it manually, like if you're manually adding emails, it shouldn't be a problem. But if we want to move away from manual, we'll have to also be careful about GDPR, which they handle very carefully. So that's another step that's another kind of benefit that we can have that we don't have to do any work for.
Okay, if you want to give me an action to talk to her about what we've got on that front, I can do that.
That'd be fantastic, Michael.
I'll get back to Ahmed to see. Hopefully, there'll be an easy answer.
Yeah, and just to structure it better, like to your point about GDPR and other things, it may not cover GDPR, but we probably want to have a process in which when we announce to all the working groups that if you have something to ask or to leverage the enterprise connections that we have, what is the mechanism to do that? So maybe we can have a part of the GitHub repo or issues or label that people can say, hey, I want to engage on X, Y, and Z. Yep. Part of that becomes perhaps a GitHub pull request as well to format the email before we actually plug it into something to send it out.
Brilliant. Yeah, I like that a lot.
I do have to go real quick, but I'll be back.
Yep. All right. Well, go ahead and go. But it's also we've reached time, so we should.
I did have one thing I wanted to spend 2 minutes on. Matteo opened an issue in the user feedback repo earlier today, and it's around. If I'm just going to open it up and share it, and where is it? Sorry, I'm just getting there. No, so that's the wrong one. Jess, you're probably looking at it already, I can tell.
96. Mihai's dropped it in. There you go.
Okay, so 96. So basically, we had at least one Twitter conversation where somebody was saying, oh, things were a mess. I'm having trouble updating to Node 10. And so we thought it actually would be useful to gather that kind of user feedback. In terms of like, hey, it's a perfect time. We're telling people to upgrade to 10. So if you're having problems, and user feedback, when I talked to Matteo, seemed like a reasonable place to collect that.
Right.
So this is the issue. And what I just wanted to say, does anybody have any concerns before we start to promote this issue as a, hey, if you're having challenges, let us know here and you can go.
Actually, I just have a thought about that.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm back. It was just pizza delivery.
Yep.
And this relates to our previous conversation as well. Seeing how the NPM team shut down their issues on GitHub, because that was the behavior. It was user feedback and obviously bug reports, but a lot of, hey, how do I do X or what's best practice on Y? They shut that down and they opened up a Discord, I think with a D, or is it a discourse? It's a forum. They use a forum tool for that.
Discord. Yep.
Discord, yeah.
It's like, discourse. Yeah, you're right. The forum. Yep.
They're confusing. Yeah. They're both chat.
Yeah, they have both.
It's like npm.community. So that acts as their authentication for users. People sign up there. It could act as a communication mechanism. I'm not sure, for announcements and community type events. So you can, it's a forum at the end of the day, but you can shape it to behave however which way you want. You can have like events on there and notify people of things. It just occurred to me right now that you can also use a forum for the same topic that we discussed previously. And as we're talking about now for user feedback, that's probably a better mechanism for collecting user feedback, keeping things open, and people can help each other, but then you can monitor it and collect data and output.
Right. So you're suggesting we open up another, like a, we've had lots and lots of discussions around using different channels.
I mean, this goes back to the Slack, Discord, forum, IRC. Like, for context, this is a 3-year discussion that's happened, and we've never come to a good solution, except for partner communities, which is now the best thing that we have, and it's in its infancy. But yeah.
Well, I mean, the reason I pointed it out is because it's NPM and it's prior art that we can ask for feedback on.
Right. And see if they're getting the type of user engagement that they'd hoped.
Exactly, as opposed to just people complaining about things that are broken because they didn't read the manual.
Right.
Sorry, this was like specifically like somebody, in that other discussion, it came out like there's a module which just hasn't been updated. It's downloaded 3 million times a week. It'd be nice to know those, if there were 5 of those modules, it would be really good to know that, because then we could, think about in the context of wanting people to move up to 10, what could we do, right?
Right.
Okay, now I really have to go. Thank you guys. See you all later.
Yep, see you later.
Thanks for lobbing that one in, Ahmed.
And I think I'll say I like the idea, but I don't think I want to wait to solve that to move this one forward.
Yeah.
I really want, what I wanted was like, does anybody have concerns about us promoting this and having it in this repo?
This point specifically, to kick off this process, absolutely not. Please feel free, and I think it's a great opportunity to to look at these moments in time, like the LTS release, and what sorts of things we can be doing to support other things that are happening in the project. I deeply appreciate Matteo for choosing to do that with us, and I think that's something that I personally love to see more. Riffing a little bit on what Ahmed was saying there, that enterprise newsletter, could be solved by having a discussion list, right? You basically subscribe to a topic on the discussion list and go from there. So yeah, some interesting consideration with all the baggage of do we go and set up or something like that associated with it. But
okay, so probably what I'm going to do is I'm going to send an FYI to the TSC and ComCom just with the link to that issue. And then as long as nobody complains, I'll ask Zibby to promote it through the Twitter account in the next little while.
Great.
Okay.
I just wanted to say I'm glad that we're seeing some action from that issue, that Twitter discussion. I'm really happy to hear that. That was kind of exactly my.
Oh, it came from a Twitter discussion. What's the original thread?
It was just someone who was someone who I know who was frustrated with Node 10 and kind of things seeming a little bit unstable after I think a discussion around Node 8 streams and Node 10 streams being different. Right. And their problem was actually not around Node 10 and Node 8 streams, but more around, they're having their own problems, and then they had a reaffirmation that things weren't perfectly great. And so it's I'm glad we kind of captured that, or I engaged with it and then pulled in a few people. And I'm happy to see that we're having some user feedback action. Like, that was my hope for it. So
awesome.
It worked.
Great. Good stuff. All right. Well, yeah, we've run a little bit over. Is there any private discussion topics that we need to address before we close out the stream? If not, I will go ahead and call it. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Okay, talk to you all later.
Thanks. Bye.
Okay, thank you. Bye.